Shit's gone sideways.
All right, cool. Let's crack on. So I'm here with Jeffrey Morgan. Welcome to Shit's Gone Sideways,
Thanks for having me, Ledge.
mate. So how would you describe yourself? Was describing you as a personal trainer, nutritionist, health and wellbeing coach?
Yeah, pretty much down those lines. Health and wellbeing consultant, coach, whatever way you want to put it.
Okay.
That's all right. We're just warming up anyway.
Yeah. So, I also have noticed I'd put you in this category that I'm seeing develop more online now, which I think I'm hoping that I've come up with this. I'm 90% sure I'd call it a crimfluencer, right? Criminal influencer, guys that have a criminal background that have now kind of turned this shit around and really are putting out this kind of positive message. And I see there's quite a few of those guys, and you're probably one of those guys that fits into that category.
Well, I love the new term, and that's something you can claim, and I suppose put that out there. Definitely, I come from that background, and it's something that it has blown up on social media, and a lot of those blokes who have gone through that journey and sought redemption and have come out the other side are those crimfluencers that
Why do
you
you
speak about.
I think that there seems to be so many people that have an interest in that, and I don't know if they say it's relatable, but at least it resonates. What do you think those guys are getting such a following? What is it about people that have come from a criminal background that now have a positive message that you think strikes a chord with people?
I think it's the side that you can't see. People are intrigued by it, right? They want to know what happens. They love the bad boy. And you look at someone like Ben Cousins in the AFL world who's gone down that pathway, and even during his career, they love the bad boy side of just men in general, I suppose. And I'm speaking more from a male's perspective, but you see people that have gone down that pathway, the intrigue behind the stories, the people that they've been locked up with, what happened in there, what was the journeys, what were your stories, and I think that's, you look at true crime podcasts, there's some of the best podcasts in the world. And, the same with a lot of shows on Netflix these days, they're down that pathway as well. So I think it's just the intrigue of where you can't go and what you don't know, and doesn't matter whether it's crime or anything in life, right? People just want to know what's behind the curtain, what's behind that particular thing. Unveil it. And I think the more we speak about it, the more people want more every time we go out and put ourselves in that path.
I think there's also I guess there's a common piece of humanity, and people like to hear a story of we all make mistakes, and
Absolutely.
then they like to see the story of someone fucking up big time and then being able to turn it around. And that's why, even now, when you see these stories about, even like when you were saying Ben Cousins, you see so many things about when he's getting his shit together now and he's on a much better path. People saying good on him. It's good to see him doing well now, And so I found that with me doing stand-up comedy, when I was doing jokes about getting arrested and going into prison, I thought this is going to suck. People are going to hate me. This is not going to work at all. But I felt like I had to do it. And I found everyone was just so positive about it. I had so many blokes come up to me afterwards and say, dude, it's so good to see someone pick up their shit and do something positive. Good on you for turning it around.
I love that. It's relatable to humans, right? No one's perfect. People that sit there and want to sling judgment, I always say this: if you got enough to sling the judgment at somebody, then you must have the solution behind the problem. Sit down with the person, have that conversation. But going back to that relatability factor of, we've been there, we've done that. We're not perfect. We're learning. We're all growing, and we're trying our best. And that's all we can do. And I think when people say, "Hey, how did that person go from that lesson or mistake?" Whatever you want to call it, right? I call it a lesson. People call it mistakes. You fucked up, whatever it may be. But in general, for me, I think it's just huge when you're able to acknowledge that, hey, I can be better. And what does that look like? And then start to do that. People are inspired by that because they're like, shit, you know what? So many people want to do something different to the person that they are.
Yep.
Just in everyday life. They don't want to be this person. And you've gone even deeper than it and even darker than that, and then stepped out of it into a further position where they want to be. So they find that relatable, and they sit down and go, you know, what did he do and how did he do it, or how did she do it? And I think that's why it's so intriguing to people, that relatability. We're all humans, and you know, we're creatures of habit. So just because we were just one bad decision or one uneducated decision different from one another. Other than that, we're the same, and sometimes we're even better on a humanity level than some other people and how we conduct ourselves and treat other humans. But, you know, people obviously go down a path of judging people.
Yeah.
And as I said, if we become a more understanding society, seeking to understand why that happened to that individual, maybe we can help someone like Benny Cousins. You know, he could have went down a path where he's no longer on this planet, and we're lucky that the bloke's still here as an example. And big shout out to you, mate, if you're out there doing good things with yourself, mate. I've got nothing but respect for the champion he, you know, was and still is.
Yeah,
he's just gone down a path. What's the root cause of his actions? What's going on in the background? And if you dig deep enough, I remember reading some components of that. We could find that in every single human being and the decisions that they're making, those choices that end them in a position where people end up slinging judgment at these individuals rather than sitting down and say, hey, Benny, how can we help you? What's the root cause of the problem? Or Jeff, what's the root cause of the problem? And let's get down to the end of it because I've got the solution and I'm going to help you out.
When I look at you now, when I see your social media content and you seem so happy to the point of almost being annoying. Like this guy, it's like the Energizer Bunny, right? Like, what's that bit from Patch Adams? Like, accused of having excessive happiness.
Oh, mate.
And so, like, I look at like the life you're living now, and kind of you've got this successful business, and your past. You did what, over 15 years in prison for mostly
over 18 years, man.
And do you ever just think like, it's crazy that I wouldn't be on the happy path that I am now if it wasn't for the fuck ups that I made, you know, that you had to go through that shit to get to the place you are now?
Absolutely. I think the darkness of it all makes you appreciate the every single second, man. When that cell door locked every single night over 18 years, and I got to that truck and I cried in the back of the truck going back to Port Phillip prison after being found guilty at my armed robbery trial in Melbourne. The last time I was locked up, that, you know, I think that stuck with me, and it makes me, when I wake up every single morning, man, I'm fucking blessed. My dog's there, my partner, my beautiful partner's there. Sal, big shout out to Sal because she, you know, and just that alone, I'm grateful for. I'm blessed to have them in my life, let alone everything else that comes into my life, and the ability to then go out and practice or a passion. You're doing it right now with your comedy, and I've got nothing but respect for you. Or something that someone's passionate about. That's the great thing about life. You can go out and follow your passion. Mine was to help change and save lives and not be the person, not have the trauma, not have the stress, the pain, the PTSD, get on the medication, maybe head down the path and leave this planet. That's passion for me, you know, and that's why, I probably got that annoying sort of little energy bunny sort of vibe coming out of myself because I just wake up buzzing, man.
I think that that's exactly right. I think it only comes from people that are really doing the thing that they love to do every single day, right?
Love it.
And it's, you can't fake that.
I love it.
You know?
This is for everyone out there that listens to this podcast. Go out and find your passion, man. You seem, you know, we had a conversation before this and you said you wouldn't care if no one showed up to your shows in general. Like, but you'd still do it because you just love doing it.
I love it. The thing is, the crazy thing is I'm 36, I'm semi-employed, new to comedy. I'm living with my parents, and I'm happier with myself and my life now than I was when I was making a pile of cash selling drugs.
That's so true, man.
You know, like I like the man I see in the mirror much more today because I'm doing something that I love doing every single day, and that spins me out. But it makes sense, you know,
mate. You know, I'll wake up, and Sal will tell you, and she's the same. And this is how intentful I've been. found somebody who's my person.
Yep.
She'll wake up and she'll look at me. She'll be smiling. I'm smiling. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. To me, that's appreciation of the fact that I woke up today. I know that someone else's family member didn't. And I got, I think being locked up gives you the chance and opportunity to get real clarity around life, around things in life and the depth of life. And we get so busy that we don't get the chance or opportunity to be grateful or sit in gratitude, too often because I'm too busy. Everything's 100 miles an hour and we just go. Next day rolls in and the end of the life rolls around. And I think that 18 years gave me real opportunity to say, fuck, I'm going to appreciate when I'm out there. I'm going to appreciate every single breath and every single raindrop and every time I wake up. And when you get to that level of attitude, backed by the passion that you have for the field that you work in, and that's, I don't even call it work. I just call it, I follow my passion every single day.
Yep.
And you look at the blokes that are doing it, Joe Rogan, people out there just doing that sort of stuff. They just do it. They just love what they do. I'm going to see Carl Barron Friday night, and the bloke just loves what he does, right? I can think of these people, Shane Warne, Steve Irwin, these people, they just did. No one would have thought, how are you going to make money off talking to animals?
Yeah,
Bloke just loved it, right? And Dave Attenborough, and all of a sudden they've gone down a path of passion and they've found their calling. And, I wish anybody that goes down that path, the same feeling, vibe, energy that I feel every single day. And hopefully that comes through the cameras to people on the other side of it.
Well, I'd much rather be on stage making jokes than be Steve Irwin tackling crocodiles in a creek.
Oh, man.
But
I'm with you.
One thing that kind of I wonder is you and I have a similarity in that we've only found the things that we love doing through crisis, right? It's by kind of shit hitting the fan, about hitting your rock bottom. And it makes me wonder, there are people who benefit right from that because they go through that kind of crisis moment and that helps them to crystallize what they want to do with their life and turn things around. But there are so many people that never have that major crisis moment, right? So they just coast.
Absolutely.
They have, jobs that they don't really like. They may be in relationships that aren't fantastic. And it's not till they get to 60, they look back and think, I was never really happy, right?
Yeah, man.
And so it's like, well, yeah, I went through this pain and this shit experience, but that actually led me onto a really positive path that I love. Whereas some people who have never experienced that crisis moment just never have the opportunity to really figure out what they... Is there something in, all the stuff that you teach that tries to help people with that? Because I would rather people help, people to turn things around without having to go through the crisis moment, right?
Absolutely. For us, that's exactly what we're doing. The first thing I always ask people is, have you ever written out what your perfect life looks like?
Yeah.
Have you ever done almost a business plan? I call it a life plan. We do a life plan with our clients. And the life plan is basically a business plan on your life. And it's so extensive and people get it and go, wow, like this is deep.
When you ask people, have they done that? How many people have actually ever done it before?
Very small. We dealt with nearly 500,000 people over the last 3 years and 7 people have done it.
7 out of 500,000.
And that, not with us. They've sort of gone down a pathway of discovery by themselves. And it's quite interesting because now I'm going to ask people, have you gone through some huge trauma or what made you go down that pathway from this point on? And that's something I'll put into the program moving forward. But I think, as you said, if you can be intentful, and I always talk about it, intentional living, people sort of, there is a huge shift towards the zen-y side of the world, I suppose, the look or frown upon, it's a bit zen-y and so forth. But when you are intentional, it's like this. I explain it to everybody when I do my workshops. When you jump in a car and you go from A to B, in this day and age, you turn on the GPS. In life, we have an A to B when you're born and when you die. But we don't have the intention. We don't turn the GPS on. We just sort of cruise the streets hoping to find the address that we're headed towards. And yes, you'll have some adventures, but you won't actually be intentful and get there really direct and cut out maybe 5 years of your time and be very clear, have total clarity around that direction, vision, purpose, and why, and then be able to then bounce to the next level and so forth. And in 20 years, I would have completed, so many more things than somebody who's driven out on those adventures. Yeah, you'll have adventures, but I'll have those same adventures as well. And I think that's something I'd pass on to anybody that's watching this. Write out your perfect life. What's it look like on all different levels? Financials, relationships. How many times a year you want to travel? Where do you want to live? By the coast, up in a mountain, out in the rural, by yourself in the middle of nowhere, with your dog hunting every single day. You choose your own adventure, but be intentful on it. Write it out, and then start to create a reaction that you want by creating an action plan. And every single thing you've written out, if it's a particular type of car, how much money do you need? How much do you currently made? Is that realistic? Because if not, how do you then create an online business for yourself that makes money while you sleep at home? And I think when people have that much intention, and people always tell me I don't have time, 3.5 hours a day, the average people are scrolling. I just seen a study. It's over one whole day a week. People are scrolling through other people's lives. Imagine if you dedicated that time to the business around the passion that we have for whatever it is. Fashion, we've seen so many people do it. We just spoke about Shane Warne, Steve Byrne.
Yeah.
Please do yourselves a favour, get out and start to be intentful and just make the time. Make it a priority for yourself, because as you spoke about, you are going to get to your elderly age and you look back and say to yourself, all right, you know what? I wasn't happy in that relationship. I wasn't happy in that job.
But I did nothing about it,
I just paid my bills.
Yeah.
And think about it, like if you go and read, if you were going to me and you sit down, we're in a nursing home now, and I say, hey, Drew, what happened? How was your life? Read it out to me. You go, I woke up, son, and went to work every day. I was a hard worker, 9 till 9 at night, got home, cooked dinner, and that's me. How does that resonate with yourself? And if that lights you up and that's your passion, go hard all day, every day.
Yeah.
But if that's not lighting your soul up, then you're dead before you're even dead. And I think that's many people, and we know that through the program. 7 people out of over 500,000 people, let that sink in. What's the percentage? 99.9% of people are just walking through life existing. And that's not me telling them. That's what we got back as the data from the programming that we've done with people.
I remember there was an article in the Daily Telegraph earlier this year when I got sentenced, and it said, Andrew Hamilton, comedian, PR man, pizza shop owner, and now convicted drug supplier. And I thought, at least that sounds like a pretty interesting guy.
Absolutely.
I was like, at least I'm not boring, but, at least now I want to try and do something a bit more positive and productive with my life. But,
I love it.
at least, looking back when I'm 60, I'm going to be like, oh, well, at least I had a bit of fun.
Mate, I think, and that's the thing. People don't take on something because of the fear. And whether it's the fear of themselves, the fear of what your parents, your teachers, everybody, you go through life, your teachers tell you don't do that, your parents tell you don't do that, maybe your brothers and sisters, then you go into uni, don't do that, your workplace, don't do that.
Yeah.
I think get out there and start to challenge yourself on a fear level. And then secondly, challenge yourself on what you don't know. Understand you'll never be the smartest person. Sometimes you won't always be the smartest person in the room, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And you won't be the fittest person in the room. That's cool too. Just be willing to grow and prosper for yourself. And that's where I don't lose. I don't ever lose. I've never lost in my life because I'm always willing to step out into an arena, whether it's sporting, whether it's business, whether it's life, and just put myself out there. And I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks. And you can judge me all you want, but in the end, I'm going to do me and you do you.
Speaking of being fit, I heard you on a podcast talking about doing bank robberies and having a jog 10 blocks to where the car was afterwards because you guys were so fit.
Absolutely.
Right? And I was like, that's pretty funny. You don't need to worry about getting your steps up that day because you can get them knocked out during the robbery.
Probably shouldn't laugh at that, but the reality is that's what happened. And you look back on it, and I was just thinking about over the years, you get to reflect on things. It's just crazy, eh? You just run off from a bank robbery, and we'd get together, we'd all meet, we'd all train, and that was our job at the time.
Yeah.
And obviously for us, our job had high stakes on every level. Where, you might not come home that day. That was the reality of our job, and I realised that if I didn't keep myself fit, I've seen many people get caught many a times because they weren't fit. They had to stop and hide, and they didn't get out of the perimeter that the police would put up at that time. And you had to Yeah, and I think that came from no, I'll rephrase that. It came from my father. Got me into soccer, 1,000 left foot kicks, 1,000 right foot kicks. Yeah, and we'd sit there for 2-3 hours playing in a park. And I think that taught me how to operate at a different level. And I think when that just transferred into the bank robberies. And when I got, same thing, we'd run off. We wouldn't have to park out the front. And I was always fit enough. I'd practice running with a huge backpack and with some weight in it, because I don't know if anyone has ever carried money. It's quite heavy, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty decent.
Yeah.
So, I took it really serious. And crazily enough, I never thought I was doing anything wrong at that point in time. That was the true story of the matter. And I think I just went back and did a talk at Oberon, the Young Offenders Program. And, some of the stuff I'd written, some of the stuff I'd spoken about to the psych, I actually said, what do you expect me to do when that's all I know? There hasn't been a program in this system that's changed me, nor could I get into the program. And this ain't a knock on corrective services. I think just we need to do better in society to help people, not just on a corrective services level, on drug and alcohol, suicide prevention, mental health, the whole lot, man. There's so many people out there, but we put up so many roadblocks because of the amount of red tape that gets in between that conversation, and we lose people through the cracks, whether it's to suicide, whether it's bad mental health, they're dead before they even die. And I think, young kids that could turn their lives around and be contributing members to society as I am now, I think we could do that a lot earlier by just sitting down and being really intentful around the decisions we're making with these people.
I didn't see when I was in prison anything which made me think that this is going to make guys do less crime,
Absolutely.
And it was just like university for crooks, and they were just learning networking and learning better tactics. People say, well, why would you want to learn off a guy who's in prison when he screwed up? It's like, yeah, but he might have got caught for the one time out of 100 that he got away with it,
Absolutely. And you build networks. You go to any business thing now, you got one day to sit down and go, hey, Drew, what are you doing? What's your name? Where you from? And sweet, let's exchange numbers. We fit in together and we're going to help each other.
Yeah.
You get in there and you get to build networks. And if someone's from Melbourne, Brisbane, all of a sudden you've got contacts up there and you got a place to stay and hide and all of the above, and get X, Y, and Z in exchange with one another. That's just dangerous, I think, on all levels. And if we can put a stop to kids that are only, how many of them, you've probably seen it, how many of them are there just surviving drug use, dealing with trauma, didn't know any better, grew up around parents that were just drug addicts, alcoholics, and no knock on it. But what do you reckon you reckon they're going into business? People are tripping.
It made me feel like more of a fuckwit for being in there, because I saw so many guys in there that I thought they were always on a path to being in here.
Absolutely.
Which made me feel like more of a screw up for the fact that it was all totally my fault that I was in there. But you see these guys in there and you think this was on the cards the entire time because of just the environment they grew up in.
Absolutely. You go to any of these areas where the struggle is real, and I remember sitting at the front of Silverwater Jail, and I was visiting my brother at the time, and same thing. All my brothers went down that pathway, and I was sitting at the front.
So you got how many brothers?
7 brothers, 2 sisters.
Yeah, wow, big family.
Yeah, huge family, and they all went down that path. Other than one sister, actually, I lied. Both sisters didn't go down that pathway. One of my sisters became a very famous jockey, and did really well for herself. She came from the same father as myself, so same discipline. And I was thinking about it today. I was only there till I was 12 years of age, and I ran away.
Yeah,
and in 12 years, he instilled so many great qualities in myself, and I think to myself, what if I had stayed there? But I thought he was being a prick at the time because everyone else was out till 10 o'clock in the local neighbourhood, Red from Waterloo, and here I was going home at 5 o'clock, and I was like, what's up your butt? And just didn't understand it as a young kid, but, mate, those values that he taught me stuck with me for life, and I'm forever grateful. And, he used to be pretty physical, trying to get that point across.
Yep.
But I think that was his way of just wanting the best for me. Yep. I look back on it now, and in the end, going back to that whole story, the values that he instilled in myself, that's what helped transform me and change me at the time when I needed to change, when I was ready to change. But I look at someone like this kid out the front of Silverwater Jail. He's, I don't know, 5 years old, and his mother's saying, hey, yeah, he's sort of playing up, kicking things and throwing things and all of the above. And the mother's swearing at him, you little mother effer and this, that, and the other. He's like, F you, I'll smash you. And you know, all these other swear words at 5 years of age. I was thinking 13 years from now, this bloke's going to sit in this jail.
Yeah.
That was my first thought.
It's an easy bet, you know.
Man, if I bet on that, I could put $1,000 and I reckon pretty sure I'm going to win, right?
Yeah.
And that's a sad story. Like, and yet we'll have people that then say to that you little kid, "Oh, you little thieving prick," or whatever it may be. And I think that's where we need to seek to understand. There's a powerful video on social media if you've ever seen it, and it's an American one. They've done an Australian version one. The ABC done the Australian version, and it's basically lining up on a line. They're going to race over 100 metres. He said, before we race, we're going to race for $100. Before we race, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and it's like, who's still got both parents in the house? Take a step forward. And by the end of it,
I have seen that video.
Yeah, you know, you got all these
privilege.
Privileged people, and I'll just say people, versus all those that aren't, sitting in the back, 20, 30 metres back. And he said these blokes would usually smoke you over this distance. I understand sometimes in life, though, we don't get the same starting line, and therefore, I've had to work, and it's not, saying, oh, poor me or whatever, but I've had to work so hard just to get myself to a level where I understood life.
Yeah.
I'm scared to get a tax file number, Drew. I'm not even joking, brother. And people don't understand that concept. So, and I'm not the only one.
So you grew up in the block in Redfern?
Yes,
right?
sure did.
For anyone that isn't familiar, so it's kind of like the housing commission kind of flats.
Yeah, it was Aboriginal housing. Yeah. And then just on the back end of that is Waterloo, and that's just all housing commission, man. And you had us. And then Glebe on the other side of that as well. So we were in the middle of those two. And
that was the area where it had the 2004 Redfern riots.
Absolutely. And a whole heap of others. Ongoing, man. Like, it was normal. Same thing. 14-year, I was thinking about this today. And you get these little flash, 14-year-old kid, and you're from Bricks at Copcast.
Yeah.
Who does that? Like a 14-year-old kid's kicking a footy. You know, my nieces, my nephews, they're playing with dolls or...
Yeah.
And here's these 14-year-old kids from Bricks at Copcast up until 6 in the morning, sleeping until 2 in the afternoon, going out and committing crime to survive the next day. That's how you mate.
But I know, from hearing a bit about your story, I know when you were younger that, if you got home late, there may not be like room to sleep, or there may not be food at home. So that kind of led to obviously making it normalized. You might try and do dodgy shit to try and get some just food, right?
Absolutely. That's how it all started. We just broke into a canteen and we were sitting there eating, and I'll never forget sitting eating chips. I'll go and get the red frogs. I'll be back.
Yeah.
And the brother was looking at me, and I was like, "Whoa, what's all this?" Found a bundle of money and realized, mate, well, they must stash money in all of these shops. Let's go have a look, and the rest was history.
It's interesting, hearing kind of your story and other stories. You see, like, these things just don't get to the extreme level of suddenly you're robbing a bank just in one night, right?
Nah,
it's a gradual progression of a mindset of normalizing things until it's just like your behavior. It makes no difference, right?
Insane.
That was the same with me. I went from me experiencing magic mushrooms and in Thailand, thinking they were amazing. My mate figuring out how to grow them, and then hooking up some friends.
Yep.
And then, friends and friends of wanting them. And then over
100%.
the course of a decade, I'm the mushroom king of Sydney,
Wow.
And I was like...
Were they on your pizzas?
You had to ask for the special with a wink. But let's talk a bit about, how that pathway went from like just... stealing some food to more serious shit. So I know the first time you got locked up, you were 14?
Yeah, I was about 14, I'd say.
Yeah, and what was that for?
Breaking in, as I believe. That's how twisted that life was, Drew. It's a true story. I couldn't tell you dates. I couldn't tell you every charge that I've ever had.
Yeah.
just wouldn't know. They're all like breaking in as robberies,
Yeah.
armed robberies, those sorts of things. But how many and when and what dates, just all right. You didn't care. You just didn't like.
Did you ever just do it on your own, or was it you always in a crew of you?
No, I could go by myself, and
Yeah.
I could go with people.
Yeah.
I found that if I went by myself, more money to me.
Yeah,
back
of
in the
course.
day, obviously, and
Yeah.
less chance of being dobbed in then. And
Yeah.
I found that the more I worked with particular people, I stayed with those people. We had a crew that stuck together for 20 years, and
Yeah.
in and amongst that world, it's pretty rare because people dob one another in, sleep
course.
with one another's partners, rob one another. All of the people left people behind that are no longer on this planet.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world. It's a crazy path, and as you said, you're a young kid sleeping in a house. 13 people is the base amount of people in the house. And then you got parties that were happening because of the trauma, and the way of dealing with things was drugs and alcohol. And, what you see, people smoking pot, that's just totally normal as a young kid. Through to, you go through these transitions where I was breaking into places. Then that went to stealing Porsches, being known as the Ram Raiders, going out. That went from breaking into clothing stores, selling those into the highest end of that sort of thing. What could we do on the back end of that? Duty frees, getting stuff with that nature, and then going into snatching money off bank counters. Then where people depositing, jumping over these people. Like, just think about that whole conversation. It's just insane. And then to say, all right, I'm going to pull a balaclava on. I'm going to run in first without the balaclava, and I'm going to jump across this counter. And they got to a point, during that transition where they had solid bank counters to a point where they had these screens that would pop up, and it had killed people.
The screens?
Yeah, over the years, people had not made it across the counter. And every time you went in, that could be the last moment. I said, see you soon to Sal yesterday, and I actually made a video after it because I felt how many people have said, I'll see you soon, and never got to see that person again. And we ran that risk without thought process, and just went out, and it was, how do you even get to that level?
Did you find it addictive?
I think I found it.
Like was there
I wouldn't
a
say-
rush to it, that the adrenaline of it that you
for
felt?
sure.
Yeah.
I think the money side of things,
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't share too much, but in the sense of other people's thoughts. But you'd sit there and I'd have this little earphone in my ear, and I'd have the driver ask me how much, because you could sort of work out once you'd sledgehammered the vault open, how much was in that vault. And you'd look at the money, and I'd be saying, you're just paying out on each other. There's nothing in here. You got nothing. Eat my
Just fucking
eat
around
my
with them.
shorts. It was probably a bit more descriptive than that. But you'd say something like that, and he'd be like, think about that in the heat of this thing where you could walk out and literally police could be out the front and shoot you dead.
Yeah.
We're having this
You're
conversation.
still cracking jokes.
It's insane. Think about, and I have to if there's a psychologist, what was going on in our brains at that point in time? Because, you've got to think to yourself, we just thought, I don't think I thought it was a game. It was just survival. So we were doing our work, and we was like, similar to what we spoke about at the start of this, it was a passion. We just wanted to make money and have a laugh while we did it.
Yeah.
But when you come out of it, you go, far out, how many people did I damage? These people had kids. These are mothers, fathers, and so forth. And that's where it sort of hit home.
It's crazy to hear you say, like, we just want to make money and have a laugh, but that laugh was robbing banks. It's like...
It's crazy. I think for people to understand the relatability, and they're like, oh, you're twisted. Understand this. You tell me now, or people tell me now they're too busy. I can't do that because I'm too busy. I was in the thought process where I was too busy just surviving that I never thought about the rest of life.
Yeah.
So that's where hopefully that sort of makes it a bit understandable to people out there, that because it is hard for people to go, that bloke's twisted. When you're in it, you're so caught up in life, you're too busy to look after yourself, lose the weight. As an example for those, obviously in this day and age that aren't in crime. But yeah, for us, we were just too busy. I wasn't stopping to think. I was like, fuck, I need money for tomorrow. I need to survive. I need a roof over my head, clothes, food. Now I've got kids. I've got to feed them. Now I've got a missus. And next minute, you're damaging people on the other side. And
you see any kind of heist or bank robbery movie from like the States, and they're always like so tense, but when you see like Aussies takes on this, like this movie's like with Heath Ledger, like Two Hands, and it's full of sense of humor, right? It's all comedy. Absolutely. They're all having a laugh, and like it sounds like it's so interesting hearing that's kind of closer to reality, that you can be so far in it that like it's just another day of doing it, that you can still be relaxed enough you can make some jokes while you're doing it.
I do, like, I look back on some of the times, you got to laugh at some of the stuff that happened. And when I say laugh at, you think back to something and you do think, fuck, that was crazy.
What's some other funny things that come to mind?
Probably one time I'd run and the window was smashed at one point, and it was so shiny. They must have cleaned the windows, and I was like, I nearly ran into it, but what I did a sidestep, bang, and I sort of kept running here. So, and at the time he was throwing something in the car. He turned around and he seen me running here as he ran past me. And then by the time he turned around, I was back here because I'd sort of sidestepped the window, come back and straighten up.
Yeah.
So he just thought, that's going to be and he just ran straight, whack, and he's bounced back off the window and, broke his nose. And for me, I look back on that and you just,
wait, is this your mate or it was
this was
security?
This was a mate of mine.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought to myself, I bet you he's going to run into that window in my head as I did it. I go, because he seen me run this line, and then when he turned around, I'd sidestep, but I was still in that same line. I go, I bet you runs into that window. And sure enough,
bang.
I heard bang. You look back on stuff like that and, you're in your field of work and something happens, and as long as it doesn't, for us, it didn't kill my accomplice at that point in time, I suppose.
Yeah.
You got to laugh at it because you're in a workplace. So someone trips over, but they don't hurt themselves. You have a laugh. The cake falls on their face or something. And that was for us. That's how deep it was back then. You just didn't think about it, and you were constantly having laughs around something that you were passionate about. You just went out and made money, and you got to think too. That's the type of people when we send kids to jail and they keep networking and they keep growing, they're upskilling themselves, they're networking, they're leveling up every single time they go in. Because you talk to different people and they'll tell you how to turn off alarms, cameras, etc., etc. Then you're going to have a problem.
Yeah,
you're going to get a wild beast, and we're seeing that on the Sydney streets at the moment with what's happening with all these shootings and the level of crime. Obviously, with the technology now, it's gone underground, and that underground means that there's going to be a lot of ball over on the outside of that. And I always expected that, and I've seen it come out of it.
I saw an interview with you where you talked about when you were younger, you got nicked one time, and a police officer saying to you, like, Jeff, why are you doing this stuff? Like, the way you did some of these things were so sharp and clever. Why? Why are you doing this?
Absolutely.
And I was interested. What are those things that you were doing that were sharp or clever? Are there any kind of particular skills that you were bringing to the table that made you kind of?
I think probably the easiest way to put it without sinking myself in a deep hole would be, imagine being able to loop a camera so that you just sat there and it could look at something and you could be in a place and there's meant to be alarms and everything of that nature, and everything's still operating as normal as it possibly can while you operate inside the place. And
that's a good skill to have. That's the kind of skill you see in movies, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think and I'll go back to my father for giving me the passion and drive to be the best that I could at something. And if I went out on that field and we technically lost, I never lost. I always was I always had the opinion, what was the lesson that you learned from that? That bloke was fast, go and sprint more. That bloke was fit, go and work harder.
If you're going to be bad, be good at being bad,
If you're going to be anything, be good at being And people like, if you're good at sewing, how many views will it get on socials, right? 1 million views, 10 million views, because someone can sew a particular way, someone can juggle a ball. So don't get caught up thinking that your skill, your expertise, your passion isn't something that people would love. And there's always your crowd, you know, whether it's religion, whether it's, you know, like I said, sewing. I'm looking at the smallest things, people that study butterflies, whatever it may be. There's people out there that love that.
Yeah.
And if you've got such a passion and you're at that high level to be able to do that, you can really excel in the field that you put your time, energy, and effort into. And I think that's something that people should always remember. Go into something, be dedicated to it, because you are about to share your life or component of your life with whatever you end up doing. And if it's something of a passion, go down that path with all you possibly got, and don't give a fuck what anyone thinks, because I think too many people in this world at the moment, especially in the social media, you know, now that social media is present, I just seen an interview where the bloke was talking about so many people go out and do things just for, you know, the clout, the likes, the views, to be seen as that person who did that, rather than just doing what you're doing at the moment, being a comedian. And at some point in time, if you blow up, congrats, man, you went down a path where you're just authentic around what you love doing.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to that level, you'll do it so organically that you'll want to grow, you want to upskill, you'll sit with Carl Barron, you'll sit with those that have done it. What have you done? How did you do that? How did you launch your national tour and all of the above? Now, that'll be just an organic path for yourself, not one where you're, you know, going out and saying, I want to make some money, and then, you know, sucking at being a comedian because you're not sort of loving what you do.
You see, there's a lot of people on things like TikTok that have these huge followings, but they just do like videos that are just whatever the trending sound is or theme of the week. And I think I'd rather have I'd rather have fuck all followers, but just be myself, like just do stuff that I am interested in, you
Absolutely,
know?
man.
And but I think just from doing that, you find people that have a genuine connection to that kind of stuff. Like if you've got 1 million followers, but all you do is just lame TikTok dances, like no one's coming to your show, you know. But if you're doing stuff where you're your authentic self and it's something which is different and original, I think you find that you find people that really get behind that.
Absolutely. We just did a leadership conference as an example, and we only had 150 spaces, and they sold out in a heartbeat.
That's crazy.
You got 150 people, and like we charged, the price for it was a premium.
Yeah,
straight out and honest, and that's because people either love you or they don't. But I don't want to. I don't need 1 million followers because I'm doing a particular dance. And each to their own. I think it's great confidence, and you know, there's so many good components of that. But go out and create your own trend, and I think that's what I did, especially growing up the way that I did. I was always going out and creating a new trend on a criminality level, and I was constantly thinking about how to make money a different way than everybody else and take it to a whole new level. And if you
just needed to get to that point where you use that skill for good,
100%,
right?
Absolutely. And now I was literally about to say, go from destructive to constructive, and you know, find a better way to do it. And there will be a better way. And it's just, I suppose, I just wasn't in an environment where I had access to, you know, Mark Burris or someone of that nature.
Totally. And you see so many of those guys in jail. You're like, this guy could be something.
Absolutely,
if he just had the right people around him and he wanted it, you know?
Mate, like I look at, that copper that spoke to me.
Yeah.
When he spoke to me, I'd actually sit and talk to him about, you know, just life.
Yeah.
I said, mate, you come and sleep in the bed and have cockroaches and rats crawl over you while people are smoking bongs, playing music full blast, and you're not sleeping at night. I'd rather be out on the streets in front of a fire with all the kids, and then you're down the path of destruction. And I think people just don't understand that journey, I think. And then you get a copper. You know, I was at Brighton once and it was pissing down rain. We get pulled over and the copper says, I said, can I ask you why you pulled us over? He goes, none of your business. And it was pissing down rain. So I just put my window up and I left the window down this much. I put he goes, license, I went like this, and I popped it out the window. It fell on the ground. He goes, pick it up. I said, mate, you pick it up. And that's the attitude you'll get, like on the back end of it. Yet same thing, if people kept going down the path and said, Jeff, what are you doing with these skills that you got? Even how I conducted myself, spoke, held myself whilst I was in that world, I had the loyalty to myself and all the people that I was around, and But to be able to hold myself in a way where, you know, you could still have that conversation. It was a respect conversation from police to yourself.
Yeah.
And they'd say, we know you done it. And one of the comments I got was that I was a duck. And I was like, what?
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's literally. I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Mate, you're a duck." And I said, "What
Quack, quack. What
Yeah.
are you talking about?
I was like, "What do you mean? Duck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Never heard the term before." And he said, "Mate, you ever seen a duck on water? It's just silent, calm, and its feet underneath it going like
Doing all
this."
the work. Yeah, okay.
And I was like, I sat
Yeah.
there and he goes, "Mate, you're using your skills the wrong way." He goes, "You're so smart at what you do and the way that you operate." He goes, "Use that same skill, that same thought process, and and you'll change your life." And quite funnily enough, that same copper, we had that conversation that day. He got shot the next day and actually died. It was pretty tragic.
Wow.
Crazy story, you know, like same thing. It's just it's a crazy world. And I end up, weirdly enough, he got shot that day. I think I was still juvenile at the time, but many years later when I was locked up in Lithgow, I was locked up with the bloke that shot him. And it's just, what a world.
Yeah.
It's just stories like that time after time after time. And I think, we've got to be able to look at a different way to help people in this world. Mental health's at an all-time high. Suicides are through the roof. And we are going down a path of more destruction. The last 2 years has smashed everybody. And until we start to seek to understand other human beings and be able to sit down with them and say, why is this person built? What is the root cause of this? We're never going to understand that person, and we're always going to sit in judgment, and we're just going to bang and butt heads all day, every day.
Do you think that that's changing a bit? Because I found, because I think everyone has gone through so much struggle over the last couple of years with the lockdowns and everything, that there is a bit more understanding, that or a bit more empathy in the world.
Absolutely, man. We had a flip of sides. People started to see things differently, and perspectives changed. And then we had a whole, bunch of people go against one another for various reasons, families, everything, division. And I think we just sort of then started to become more empathetic on the back end of it. And there was good things as much as it was crazy as well, but there's some good things that came of that.
Yeah.
People became very tight. There was huge formations of people that believed one side or the other. And I think if we could do that as a whole in society, with love, kindness, empathy and respect, as my mother and grandmother taught me, towards one another as the binder to the cement, if you want to put it that way, then we're going to see a happier society, man. No one wants to... No, you don't want to walk down the street and be robbed by anyone, king hit by anyone, see violence, see a bomb drop down a city or something of that nature. We want to see everybody live their best life and thrive in an environment that's conducive to that. And until we change, and that was a good thing about those last years, we're not going to see that.
I think there's also been so many conversations about people just being able to speak up when they're struggling, and also, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do comedy, was to just be an example. Like, you can fuck up and have it all fall apart, but you can turn it around.
Absolutely.
One thing that really affected me was like my cellie in 4 different prison wings at Parklea, who was like my best mate in prison and really helped me through my toughest periods. When he got bail, he killed himself.
Oh,
And,
wow.
It wasn't until, and I never got a chance to talk to him again when I got bail.
Wow.
And, I felt like he must have been in such a dark place to do that. And I thought, it makes you just think, like, I would rather do comedy and make people laugh and show them that, like, you can turn things around. Like, it doesn't have to be the end of the story. Like,
sure,
I mean, you're just another perfect example of that. That, you can really, really royally fuck things up, but as long as you're still breathing, like, there's time on the clock to make a comeback.
Absolutely, man. Let this be a lesson to this is what I teach everybody. You've never made a mistake, you've never fucked up. And people say, "What are you talking about? I've fucking made a million mistakes." You're always learning from the mistake. And if you change it into learning, then you're growing and prospering in that situation. If you say, "Oh, I fucked up," I'm putting a negative tone to it, your brain will only hear what you tell it. And a recent study showed that if you don't talk to yourself in a negative light, you increase your chances of success by 70%. That's huge. That's massive. But we'll do it all the time. Fuck, I fucked up. And we automatically, it's like when you wake up, oh, what a shit day when it's raining. We're feeding our brain, our soul, our mind, our spirit, that negativity, and then that opportunity to get that 70% increase in success. If that was a business opportunity, and I said, I'll go increase your business by 70% if you do this one thing, fuck every man on this planet. What's that? Tony Robbins would say, tell me how the fuck do I apply that to my business right here, right now? And we've just given you that. So look at something that you feel that you fucked up on or made a mistake and say, what was the lesson that I learned from this situation? And that's where you'll grow in life. Look, Drew, you spoke about your co-accused, losing that. Something for me, I'll get a phone call and, I'll go out to Waterloo Flats and to identify my brother who was a long-time drug user. Unfortunately, from that, got an abscess, went into hospital, RPA here in Sydney, and went home, pulled the cords out, went, I'm getting well and I'm going to check out. And next morning had a shower and bled to death. And, going in and seeing my brother like that, stiff on the floor, blood everywhere, as the sole person who would go and identify that, my brother, let that sink into people to make the most out of your life. Life can be snatched from you in a heartbeat. My father dropped at home, collapsed. Ambulance comes. Where'd you get the burn from, mate? What burn are you talking about? That burn there. Oh, wow. Where'd that come from? Scan him, brain tumor. 7 weeks later, he never came out of hospital. So it can happen so quick, and you've spoken about your co-accused. People, stop beating up on yourself about the lessons that you should be learning in your life. They're not mistakes. They're not fuck-ups. What's the lesson? Write it out. What was the lesson that taught me so I grow and prosper in this situation? You've turned a negative into a positive, a destructive thought into a constructive thought, and you've increased your chances of success by 70%. And make sure on the back end of that, whether it's my family, whether it's your co-accused or anybody out there from your own family or friends that have passed away, use that as your motivator, your drive, your fuel, your passion, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that you get up and fucking grind every single day as hard as you possibly can towards what your fucking passion is, because life's too short.
Your parents both had passed away before you started to turn your life around, is that right?
Yeah, correct, man.
I mean, it sounds like from what interviews I've heard where you talked about that you're quite philosophical, you're at peace with that. But I found that I would find that quite hard, because this is such a special thing that you're doing now with your life. How do you how do you deal with that? Because part of you must think, I'd love that they could have seen where I'm at now.
There's been times I broke down.
Yeah.
Like, to be straight out and honest, and I'll do it in my own time. I think, my father tried so hard, man, like so hard to see me. I probably had a cry. I think it was in the last week. I was driving home and I'd done something really good, and I was just thinking, how proud he would be. And it's hard, like, it beats you up. I've learnt to regulate it. I suppose that's probably more the conversation of it, and that's what we do with people. We, teach people to regulate it so you don't lose. Time's precious. I just spoke about it with the people we've lost, and they didn't get to see me. I came home. I had a TV show within 2 years of coming home, and
that's pretty amazing.
And same thing. I didn't take it for what it was at the time. I just sort of rolled with them. Oh yeah, that's what
cool.
Yeah, cool, whatever. But you look back on the life that I had. It was actually really an amazing journey, and just my mother especially. She went through a lot of struggle through that journey, where she taught me a lot about her standing on one side of the pub because of the colour of her skin, and I think just the sadness behind that, and not to be able to see me on a show that represented our culture and community. I think that was just huge, and it breaks my heart. There's times I do have a cry, and I'm a man. I'm a human. I've got emotions, and you get caught up sometimes where you don't think about things, and we try and brush it aside, and then we carry it, and it becomes really heavy. And I've learnt to regulate it. What are the lessons I'm learning? And I think in spirit, my grandmother taught me something very powerful, and this is what she had emphysema. She was sitting down on a fence. So I was sitting there, and I sort of had my head down. And she goes, "You look distracted. You look sad, son." I said, "Oh, you're leaving this planet." She looked at me. She goes, "I never leave this planet." I was like, "What do you know that I don't?"
Yeah.
Like literally, I was where I sit there, and then she turned to me. She said, "Son, I've taught you everything I possibly know, and I know that you'll share that with every single person that you come across because you respect me." And to me, I think that stuck with me forever. And I've realised that everything that my mother had taught me is who I am today. And it took me 18 years to get to that location, unfortunately. Wish I listened and learned a bit earlier. But in general, looking back on it all, man, you've got to be appreciative. And I use my grandmother's spirit to say that my parents are still walking beside me. Even in this podcast, I think I almost feel like I'm in a room. I did this photo once it was a exhibition thing. I think it was at a Olympic Park. And they had the Mind, Body, Soul Festival, I think it was called. And they took all these photos, and they take the photo. They're like, oh, my God. I was like, what's going on here,
Yeah.
I didn't rob anybody. Just chill out. And she comes back, she goes, mate, take your photo around. And they had all these photos up on almost like a mugshot.
Yeah.
Everyone that had been arrested wasn't that. It was a Mind, Body, Soul thing. But mate, I was the only person who had this real light blue aura around me, and it was really large. And she said, mate, you got all these spirits around yourself. And I just feel like maybe that's why I have that strength not to sort of stop.
That's really cool.
And I see, today I got in the lift, even coming here, it was really weird. And the lift door went, and when someone else gets in, the lift door shuts, opens again.
Yeah.
And so I turned, I said, hurry up, get in, we've got to get going. I've got to get to this podcast.
Just talking to the ghosts.
Yeah, like, and in spirit, I feel that they're still watching over me, man. And I just think, in that and the fact that, I damaged a lot of people on that journey, Drew, and I'm not proud of it. You look back on it, because I know that, the hurt, the heartache, the pain, the suffering as a young kid that I went through because of all the trauma that I endured. And knowing that I inflicted that on people, knowing that whole journey behind my parents and them not seeing, they died and I was in custody, both of them. Imagine seeing your son in custody when you're dying and you're on your deathbed, and they didn't get to see me by their side. And I think that'll live with me forever. And that's probably my karma, my return of what I've done to people.
My parents were crushed when I got arrested and taken to prison. It hit my mum really hard. And, I think that's one thing that I hadn't factored in was, I was happy to do the crime and do the time, but I hadn't really thought through the fact that I wouldn't be doing it alone.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the things that has really kind of changed my outlook on everything. Is that, like, I've got to do better, not only for myself, but also for I have so many people that love me, and I owe them better than that as well.
Man, and the ones that love you, they're the ones that will visit you. They're the ones that will be there. They'll do anything. They'll be there every single day. What do you need? What do you want? How can I help? What days you caught, and all of the above. And those that we gave so much time to, they disappear in a heartbeat, man. So just make sure that you know who you're dealing with. I want to, just talk about on the back end of that whole conversation. As a man, we're beat up in society so much not to show your emotions, not to fucking shed a tear, not to be, and people say, hey, Morgs was tough and he went through 18 years and he was staunch and all of the above. But you got to let go of your emotions, man, because if you don't let those go, it's like a massive dam building up to the point where it breaks. And when it breaks, I've spoken about this so many times on socials, down the path of, fathers that don't see their kids, that want to see their kids as an example, they go down this path where they push for so long, and they make two choices. They either end up striking out at the person, which is not cool and not right.
Yep.
And then they're judged by society, what a shitbag and all of the above, or they check out from this planet. And I want to ask everybody that watches this podcast, who gets charged for that? Who's been held accountable for that person checking out that they were pushed so deeply, and this could be male or female, but I know it happens so much with men, and they get pushed. They want to be a good father. They want to see their kids, and just be, as men especially, or even females, let's work together, because in the middle of that conversation, as an example, is a kid, and that kid is losing 50% of the knowledge, the love, the care, the grandparents, and all of the above that they could have access to. And that's where we, another component of society where we can be better. And I just think on the back end of it, men get smashed so much on an emotional level. Don't be afraid to show your emotions. Don't be afraid to let go of it. And fuck what anybody thinks. Start to be yourself, because in this world where we have so much, especially with social media, fucking put on a brave face, puff your chest out, have a fucking cry and let it go. Write it down. What's the lesson you're learning from it, and grow from it on the other side. You'll come out fucking tough as, and resilient as, and more importantly, authentic as to yourself, the most important person on this planet. And you won't allow yourself to carry that weight until that dam bursts. And I think that's, beyond powerful, man. It's life-changing. It's life-saving.
I know, sitting in a cell at Park Lee when I had lost my business, my home, my freedom, my fiance left me.
Wow.
I lost my 2 dogs. I got rehomed, lost my cat. And I wanted to cry, but I was like, I can't cry in this fucking place. I didn't want to show any weakness at all.
How crazy is it?
And it's
That's a true story. You would have been man. We've got a dog. Who's a year old, and I know Sal's the same. And we love our dog to death. I love Sal to death, and just to lose those 2 people, let alone everything else you spoke about, just be heartbreaking, man. And you get into an environment, and this is it. You're demoralised during that journey, and I understand, right? You spoke about do the crime, do the time.
Yeah.
Cool. But what could we do differently, man? I'm sure we can get in. If you were to, and I know they used to do this in boys' home, and I know that helped me quite a lot. They get you out, they get you into the community, you play sport, you work, and all of the above, right? And it taught you good values, morals, and beliefs around things that you never saw in my community. And people who are of great ethics that taught me these things that I took out. And that stops people losing all of the above. And on the other side of losing all of the above is a trauma that we dish out to the people on the other side of that, the actions that we're taking, the deaths maybe that come from any crime that we go out and commit. And I think that's,
I certainly think there's a lot to be said for destigmatizing guys that have been to prison.
Absolutely.
Because I think if they're marginalized, then they feel like the only guys that they can identify with are other guys that have been to prison. It just makes things so easier for you to get back to doing crime, right?
Absolutely.
And so, that's certainly something that I think is happening slowly, and certainly something that I try to do with comedy is to be like, I went to prison, but now I make jokes about it, whatever. We can move on with your life. But also for that to be that mindset in the public, like you're not just defined by your mistakes,
Absolutely.
And you're a perfect example of that. And there are so many other guys that are examples of that. And I think the more that becomes mainstream, that these people can get out of prison and just pick up their life and try to do something positive again, without being kind of stigmatized by society, is a good thing.
Love that. I think, and before people say, oh, look, I've never been in prison, this doesn't apply to me, it could be domestic violence.
Yeah.
As I said before at the start of this podcast, if you have enough to be able to judge, hey, Drew's hit that person or Jeff's hit that person, they're no good. Well, you must have the solution. So instead of slinging mud at this person, sit down with them, because maybe their parents dealt with it in that way. And the person, similar to myself, growing up, surviving, going to a bank robber, you don't even realize the transition. You go, I'm boss around here. This is how we sort things out.
Yeah, things have just been normalized by their
100%.
Yeah.
And people go, you got to understand, people are 2 totally different people. And it's to sort of give you context or to get an understanding of it. You wouldn't do something that you weren't passionate about. You wouldn't go into a nightclub that played music that you didn't like, right? And that's being able to have a conscious decision around an action that you want in your life to create an emotion that you want within your life. But people will do it organically. We just wake up and that same emotion that we seek to, I'm going to go into an R&B club because I like dancing to that type of music, makes me feel great. For us, growing up in that environment, what made me feel great is making sure I had a roof over my head, food on the table, money in my pocket, and I just had to do whatever I needed to do. But there's a huge disconnect, because if you are in business, in corporate, and you are working just, as a youth worker, no disrespect to either of those two, but you're both in your passion, two totally different pay packages, but you just wouldn't, this youth worker wouldn't operate at the same level as Tony Robbins' staff, right? A staff member as an example. And this person would say they're too lax and too chilled out.
Yeah. But if they're content in their life.
100%. But there's a disconnect because there's no understanding of the corporate level versus just the everyday sort of dealing with younger kids level, right? And that's where we sit in society, where people, we didn't get that head start like that race I spoke about before. You just don't understand what you're talking, an alien language, a foreign language to me when you speak about getting your tax file number, your CV. What's a CV? Oh, is that a new model Holden? Yeah. That's what you know. That's what I'm thinking. What's a CV, brother? Like back then. Yeah. And I think instead of saying you're so embarrassed because you don't know what they're talking about, you go, oh yeah, no worries, yeah, CV. Yeah.
And so you don't even learn from it.
Hardcore. You just walk away from it, and it's like anything. People, if you say to people that something that they're fearful of, this will help people understand this. What do? You got fight or flight system. You run away from it. Yeah. So the same principle for us. CV, what are you talking about? I'm going to run away from that. You have a fear of snakes, something in particular. You're going to run away from it. So stop sitting in judgment. Start sitting in understanding and flip that mentality. Create a better reality as human beings.
Do you think social media makes it worse? Because you see these people with these perfect lives and just all this wealth and all this kind of stuff, and it makes it harder to be satisfied with just your life, even though you might be very happy with it. You always feel you're comparing yourself to others.
Absolutely, and there's a huge convo on that: internal versus external. Probably the easiest way. Internal is about what you can control. Celebrate the little things that you've done in your life and where you are right here, right now. I could focus on the years I've wasted. I've fucked up 18 years. I'm way behind the 8 ball. Or how many times have I been able to celebrate? How many lives have you changed and impacted in that journey? And then I wake up every single day. I've gone through times where I've got eviction notices building our businesses. And I think that, to me, allows me to be appreciative of where I am now. And that's the internal of what I've done. If I say, hey, what's Drew doing? Shit, he's a millionaire driving a Lambo at the moment. I'm not good. My success might be going down the beach, walking my dog, watch the sun come up and still have a roof over my head and not having a rat and cockroach crawl over me, and then transferring from that bed into Parramatta Jail, which brought the same process. Waking up to a bloke having who had HIV, having a heroin shot in front of myself as a young 18-year-old kid. Like, think of it, it's just, that whole transition, that whole context to life, man. It's just focus on the internal. Yeah. Let go of the external, which is what you can't control, and start to then work out what's your best solution around the external of your life. The last 2 years should have taught a lot of people. If you became adaptive to that, you just said, it's present, but I'm going to live life as best I can in these 2 years, and the restrictions we had. I was out and about within my local LGA as much as I possibly could be, and I think that's all you could do at that point in time. And rather than saying, oh, this is bullshit, I want to fight the system, I'm going to buck it, I'm going to drive here, there and everywhere, get fined, maybe thrown down on the concrete and all of the above, end up in courts. That's how life is. If you try and control the external, it's going to beat you up. If you focus just on the internal of what you got, be grateful what you do have, be blessed by what you do have, you're going to have a different attitude going towards life. And the old attitude, your attitude determines your altitude within life in all aspects. And I think whether that's on your mindset, whether that's on your financial level, your love, and all of the above. Make sure you're tapping into what you can control and let go of what you can't.
I certainly appreciate the little things in life more after doing some prison, because just even fresh eggs, fresh eggs. I was like, man, I have one every day now because I didn't realize how much I missed them until Yeah, just eating fucking powdered eggs all the time.
Crazy, eh?
I had
the little things.
yeah.
And like how you have to cook them up.
Yeah.
You go out on the in the wing as an example. You got to wait your turn, and if you get in the wrong line or someone wants to push in line, then maybe you're gonna have to fight your way.
Yeah.
Have you got enough to buy a Breville? Maybe you don't. And it's just like people focus on so much shit outside, and I mean this in the nicest way. It's one thing I loved about inside. It made me really grateful for just the simplest things in life where people don't. Oh, fuck this. Oh, why can't we get that? Why can't we get this? You want more than you've already got.
Yeah.
And you focus on what you don't have. So many people focus on what you don't have rather than what you've already got. You look at people, I know in Sri Lanka at the moment, there's, so many people struggling. I got a lady that contacted me on social media and said, oh, I need your help. And I thought it was an old scammer. And, I started getting videos. She video called me, mate. They cook up on an old stove with old wood, as an example. And I was like, man, I live very good.
Yeah.
Even if I'm struggling, I'm living a good life. So start to focus on what you do have and start to realise, have a look around people, because fucking there's enough media out there to show you that we live a good life here in Australia.
Yeah, well, I thought I lost, all the things that I mentioned before, but I realised like I still had my health, I still had my family and a lot of friends that love me. I still had my sense of humour, which I didn't. I'd
love that.
Certainly helped me.
How'd that go in there? I went all right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't there going around the yard saying jokes, but there's sometimes when things are so funny, you forget where you are, And I was like, wow, laughter's actually a pretty powerful thing.
Absolutely.
So that's why I was like, I want to spend the rest of my life doing that.
There is some pretty funny blokes in there, eh? I think
so many.
Yeah, like you just
more than the average open mic in Sydney. So,
and I think you have to become very creative, right? Man, some of the stuff they do in there is unbelievable.
Absolutely.
There's just the creativity, the sense of humour, but there's a real fine line as to what you say. Are you talking about me? You got a problem?
Yeah, that's right.
And being able to put that in a way where it's still funny, but we're all laughing together. We're not laughing at you because it could end up really dangerous.
Right? Yeah.
And that's I think.
I think things.
I never thought about that, Drew. And I don't know about yourself, but you wake up and you do the wrong thing. You take someone's food. You line up in the wrong spot. You take someone's phone spot, and I've seen some crazy things in there. I've seen, mate, people using drugs as an example. I remember at Long Bay, sitting in the yard, and all of a sudden this bloke, one of the boys come over, the Aboriginal boys, and they said, oh, he's going to back me up. And I was like, what's going on? What's happened? I was always one where I wanted us to, every single one of us in that yard, didn't matter what race you were, I just wanted us to do it as easy as we possibly could. So I tried to create a solution. This bloke's going off. He's gone over. He's king hit these two other blokes, and it's on.
Yeah.
Everything jumps off, and it was a normal day, sunny day out at Long Bay. We were all trying to get on, and next minute, it's an
out of nowhere.
brawl, and brother gets stabbed in the ass on the left-hand side of me, funnily enough.
Your brother?
Yeah, and then another one gets stabbed in the head.
Far out.
One of the boys from Redfern, his name's Boxhead. They actually stabbed Boxhead in the head. The worst place you could ever stab somebody who's got a box head, and it looks like an absolute meathead. It'd be the last place I'd try and stab. Anyway, long story short, that's how quickly prison can jump off.
Yeah.
And, if you can't find a reason when you wake up look at the people that aren't in your life anymore. Look at how quickly something could jump off in your life. And we see, man, there's social media videos where bloke's riding along the road and gets bumped and bounces off the pole, goes under the truck, and bang, gone, right? Yeah. That's how quick life can end. And the same thing when we were in there, that's how volatile it was. And you see so many influencers, as you've spoken about, speaking about these times in Goulburn yards, Lithgow yards, in Sydney, Barwon. I was down in Barwon and the things you see, they're traumatic for life. Johnny Killick's escape, like it was as hard as we were. No one's ever experienced that in Australia's history. And I was on the oval right next to that.
It's crazy
chopper.
hearing it from John's perspective, but it's also funny, like hearing it from you were in the yard, just seeing this crazy fucking prison escape happen with a helicopter. Right?
Crazy. I was in the same pod, so we went out to the oval together.
Yeah.
And Johnny at that time told me, John, Morgs, I need the phone.
Yep.
I had no idea what he was doing. Yeah, no worries, mate. Make sure they don't let the door go in the MRC, which was electronic doors, because once that shut, he wasn't getting out to the Oval.
Yeah, and he's on the phone to Lucy ordering a helicopter.
Yeah,
you know,
saying, come and drop the pizza off. But mate, we get out there and he didn't even remember this, and this is the same depth. I said, do you remember you threw your jumper? He undid his jumper and he sort of went like this, fuck, blow this joint, and jumped on there. And then it sort of done its little 3-step U-turn, and I thought, fuck, it's
like
too
something
heavy.
out of a movie.
Yeah, it's not going to get off the ground.
Yeah.
And you're same thing, you have this little thought process, what if I jump on the side of that? And then, the tower's behind you, like, fuck that, they're going to shoot. If they shoot, I'm going to be hanging off the edge, no chance, right?
Yeah, or falling off. Yeah,
mate,
whatever.
they start unloading rounds into the chopper, and we're 20 meters away from that chopper, and I'm in the path of the fire. So I'm literally, you can hear the bullet scream past yourself, just flying through the air, hit the thing, and you're waiting for, like, you see the movies, Arnie's in, and it hits the chopper and it blows up and the blades go flying and your head chops off, right?
Yeah.
So, like, it's just, and I remember going back to
You wouldn't be able to
myself.
believe your eyes,
It was fucking, like, to me, I reckon that was one of the most traumatic things I ever went through. It was, as much as, back in them days, you're happy for Joe. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, see you, Johnny. And he flew into the sunset, literally, I swear. The chopper got smaller. And another thing he didn't realise, when he took off, it was the Olympics were happening at the time, and there was a Black Hawk helicopter in the actual sky at the time. I was like, oh, no, because it actually took off sort of after him. I was like, oh, you're joking, mate. He's going to get pinched, right?
Yeah,
But obviously they turned the transponder on and off, and there was no issue with that. But it was just like, to me, I went back to my cell, and I think I was still shook by it, because the gunshots, the adrenaline of it all, that was probably the most adrenaline I've had in the history of crime.
It's so fucking nuts. Like,
it was insane. You get, and to describe it, it's very hard to describe what happened and the feeling of it, and and then to see him get away with it, and all the officers just standing on the ground. What do? They got the dogs there, they got everything. They're looking up in the sky, and he's see you later.
Yeah.
And every yard backs onto the oval. And as it took off and it flew off, everyone just was clapping. And it was just
Well, yeah. I mean, as an inmate, you wanted to get away, right? You're like,
absolutely. But it was traumatic, and we just don't. I never looked at it until I came out of it, and I went, "Fuck!" I never dealt with so much trauma going through that whole experience. The amount of close death experiences, a lot of times not because of myself, but other people's actions. They, ticked up on drugs or whatever it may be, and then brought it back to the group, and then said, "Fuck, you better back me up." And as a race, that's what happens. You just do it, man, and it's insane, right? And in the end, it's just a crazy life, and people just don't understand the depth of that conversation. So I'm grateful that I'm here, and I want people out there to find your why when you wake up every single morning. Who did you lose that you love suddenly? And how much can that resonate with yourself that you can be snatched from this planet, so that every breath you take, every bit of smell that you take in, every bit of noise that you hear, be appreciative of it, man. I hear a bird in the morning and I sit there and I pause for a moment and just embrace it. And we just don't do that. I'm too busy. Here's the thing, and I'm going to give you a biggest example. My mother had leukemia. When they said you need to be at the hospital at 9 o'clock for your chemotherapy, and I can guarantee this with anyone that's been through cancer, their parents, their person got to that hospital at 9 a.m. They made the time because it became a priority. So make yourself a priority, find your why, and start to be intentful around every single action, and watch your life go from just that adventure where you're loose and you're all over the place into a compressed bunch of your vision, purpose, and why, and what's the clarity you gain, what's the direction that your life heads in, this abundance of happiness, inner peace, and as you spoke about, annoyance coming through the camera to yourself.
I think that's a really important message. So where can people find more information about the Jeffrey Morgan Lifestyle Program?
www.jeffreymorgan, JEFFREY, wellbeing.com.au. We do a lot around mental health and wellbeing leadership, whether that's on a corporate level, whether it's at schools, health services, communities, individuals. We do the online program, both with the leadership and the mental health program. But you can also jump on the online lifestyle program. And that's basically all of our resources, about 4,000 pieces that you can work through at your own pace and just enjoy the journey towards your best self.
Awesome. Well, look, I think we covered off some really awesome stuff tonight. I think, I'd love to have you back again sometime soon because I feel like we only scratched the surface of so many things we could talk about.
Mate, loved the journey and I love the conversation. And, mate, I wish you nothing but the best in life and keep doing. Focus on the lessons that it taught you and keep believing in yourself and don't worry about the opinions of others because everyone's always going to have an opinion. I always say what someone says about you, Drew, isn't your business. How you respond to that person is the awareness that you have of yourself, and I think that's a huge journey for anybody out there. Use the same mentality, create a better reality, you're worth it.
Awesome.
Love you.
Well, thanks for coming on, Jeffrey Morgan.
Champion.
This has been Shit's Gone Sideways.
Shit's Gone Sideways.